warm greetings from TNV Academy. Today in this discussion, we will talk about CE marking. Before we move ahead, let me tell you what are the key learning out of today's session. Through today's session, you will be able to understand what is CE marking, countries requiring the CE marking on products, rules underlying CE marking, what is self-certification and its stages, products requiring CE marking, characteristics of CE marking, how to obtain CE marking. So let's start our discussion and know what is CE marking. The Conformite Européenne mark is defined as the European Union's mandatory conformity marking for regulating the goods sold within the European Economic Area since 1985. The CE marking represents a manufacturer's declaration that products comply with EU's new approach directives. These directives not only apply to products within the EU, but also for products that are manufactured in or designed to be sold in the EEA. This makes the CE marking recognizable worldwide even to those unfamiliar with the EEA procedures. On commercial products, the letters CE means that the manufacturer or importer affirms the goods conformity with European health, safety and environmental protection standards. It is not a quality indicator or a certification mark. The CE mark indicates that the product may be traded freely in any part of the European Economic Area, regardless of its country of origin. It consists of the CE logo and, if applicable, the 4-digit identification number of the notified body. The 4-digit identification number of the notifying body involved in the conformity assessment procedure. It is a criminal offense to affix a CE mark to a product that is not compliant or offer it for sale. The marking does not indicate EEA manufacture or that the EU or another authority has approved a product as safe or conformant. The EU requirements may include safety, health and environmental protection standards. If stipulated in any EU product legislation, assessment by a notified body or manufacture according to a certified production quality system may be required. Now let us know that which countries in the European Union require CE marking on products. Countries such as Greece, Norway, Germany, United Kingdom, Netherlands, France, Turkey, Malta, Finland, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Estonia, Sweden, Lithuania, Denmark, Spain, Liechtenstein, Czech Republic, Slovenia, Latvia, Cyprus, Slovakia, Italy, Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria, Portugal, Iceland, Belgium, Poland, Hungary and Austria are the few of the European Union members who require CE marking on the products. Let's move forward and discuss about the rules for CE marking. The formal legal status of the CE mark is set out in various EU directives. The underlying principles are explained in the Commission's Blue Guide. The manufacturer of a product affixes the CE marking to it but has to take certain obligatory steps before the product can bear CE marking. The manufacturer must carry out a conformity assessment, set up a technical file and sign a declaration stipulated by the leading legislation for the product. The documentation has to be made available to authorities on request. Importers of products have to verify that the manufacturer outside the European Union has undertaken the necessary step and that the documentation is available upon request. Importers should also make sure that contact with the manufacturer can always be established. Distributors must be able to demonstrate to national authorities that they have acted with due care and they must have affirmation from the manufacturer or importer that the necessary measures have been taken. If importers or distributors market the products under their own name, they take over the manufacturer's responsibilities on their own. In this case, they must have sufficient information on the design and production of the product, as they will be assuming the legal responsibility when they affix the CE marking on a product. There are certain rules underlying the procedure to affix the marking, which are products subject to certain EU directives or EU regulations providing for CE marking have to be affixed with the CE marking before they can be placed on the market. Second one, manufacturers have to check on their sole responsibility which EU legislation they need to apply for their products. The product may be placed on the market only if it complies with the provisions of all applicable directives and regulations and if the conformity assessment procedure has been carried out accordingly. The fourth one, the manufacturer draws up an EU declaration of conformity or a declaration of performance and affixes the CE marking on the product. The fifth one, if stipulated in the directive or regulation, an authorized third party must be involved in the conformity assessment procedure or in setting up a production quality system. The sixth one, if the CE marking is affixed on a product, it can bear additional markings only if they are of different significance, do not overlap with the CE marking and are not confusing and do not impair the legibility and visibility of the CE marking. Let us now understand about the term self-declaration and what are its stages. Depending on the level of risk of the product, the CE marking is affixed to a product by the manufacturer or authorized representative who needs to ensure that the product meets all the CE marking requirements. In some cases, if a product has minimal risk, it can be self-certified by a manufacturer, making a declaration of conformity and affixing the CE marking to their own product. Self-certification exists only for products that have a minimal risk for their use, and this is clearly foreseen in the relevant directive according to the product category. In order to certify, the manufacturer must do several things, which I am going to discuss over here. The first one, investigate whether the product needs to have a CE marking. The product must conform to all directives that apply to the product. The second one, choose the conformity assessment procedure from the modules called out by the directive for the product according to each category involved. There are several modules available for the conformity assessment procedures, but only a few of them involve self-certification. The most of these procedures require a type approval, production conformity assessment by a notified body. The most of these procedures require a type approval and a production conformity assessment by a notified body. The common procedure or modules of the certification are Module A, which says Internal Production Control. Module B, EC, Type Examination. Module C, Conformity to Type. Module D, Production Quality Assurance. Module E, Product Quality Assurance. Module F, Product Verification. Module G, Unit Verification. And Module H, Full Quality Assurance. The level of risk is defined by the category of each equipment. The higher the category, the higher will be the risk. After defining the category, the manufacturer, in order to obtain certification, shall then apply the relevant procedures for the specific category of the product or choose the relevant procedures for a high category product. The manufacturer, after ensuring that the relevant modules for the product category have been applied, will affix the CE mark and draw up a declaration of conformity. The declaration of conformity contains a description of the product, the directives applied, the product category for each directive, the module chosen, and the name and registration number of the notified body involved in certification procedures. In reality, the self-certification process consists of the following stages. Stage 1, identifying the applicable directives. In this particular stage, identifying which directive may be applicable, as there may be more than one, involves a simple exercise of reading the scope of each directive to establish which apply to the product, such as Low Voltage Directive 2014. If the product does not fall within the scope of any of the sectoral directives, then the product does not need to bear CE marking. Stage 2. Identify the applicable requirements of the directives. In this stage, each directive has slightly different methods of demonstrating conformity depending on the classification of the product and its intended use. Every directive has a number of essential requirements that the product has to meet before being placed on the market. Stage 3. Identify an appropriate route to conformity. It means the process is not always a self-declaration process. There are various attestation routes to conformity depending on the directive and classification of the product. Many products such as invasive medical devices or fire alarm and extinguisher systems, pressure equipments or lifts etc. in most cases have a mandatory requirement for the involvement of an authorized third party, which may be a notified body. There are various attestation routes which include an assessment of the product by the manufacturer, an assessment of the product by the manufacturer with additional requirement for mandatory factory production control audits to be carried out by a third party, an assessment by a third party with the requirement for mandatory factory production control audits to be carried out by a third party. Stage 4. Assessment of the product's conformity. It means when all of the requirements have been established, the conformity of the product to the essential requirements of the directive needs to be assessed. This usually involves assessment or testing and may include an evaluation of the conformity of the product to the harmonized standards identified in Step 2. Stage 5. Compile the technical documentation. It means technical documentation, usually referred to as the technical file relating to the product or range of product, needs to be compiled. This information should cover every aspect relating to conformity and is likely to include details of the design, development, and manufacture of the product. Technical documentation will usually include the following points: technical description, drawings, circuit diagrams and photos, bills of materials, specification and where applicable EU declaration of conformity for the critical components and material used, details of any design calculations, test reports and assessments, instructions, EU declaration of conformity. Technical documentation can be made available in any format and must be held for a period of up to 10 years after the manufacture of the last unit, and in most cases reside in the European Economic Area. Stage 6. Make a declaration and affix the CE marking. It means when the manufacturer, importer or authorized representative is satisfied that their product conforms to the applicable directives, an EU declaration of conformity must be completed. For partly completed machinery under the machinery directive, an ECU declaration of incorporation is necessary. Now we will understand that what are the different products that require CE marking. The directives requiring CE marking affect the following product groups: active implantable medical devices, appliances burning gaseous fuels, cableway installations designed to carry persons, construction products according to regulation EU number 305, eco-design of energy-related products, electromagnetic compatibility, equipment and protective systems intended for use in potentially explosive atmospheres, explosives for civil uses, fertilizers, hot water boilers, in vitro diagnostic medical devices, lifts, machinery, measuring instruments, medical devices, noise emission instruments, non-automatic weighing instruments, personal protective equipment, pressure equipment, pyrotechnics, radio equipment, recreational craft. All of these particular products are listed under the CE marking category. Now let us learn about few characteristics of CE marking. Following are the few important characteristics of CE marking. First one, the CE marking has to be affixed by the manufacturer or its authorized representative in the European Union according to its legal format, visibly, legibly and indelibly to the product. When a manufacturer puts the CE marking on a product, it implies that it complies with all the essential health and safety requirements from all the directives that applies to its product. The next one is the size of the CE marking must be at least 5 mm. If enlarged, its proportions have to be kept. The next one is if the appearance and workmanship of a product do not allow for the CE marking to be affixed on the product itself, the marking has to be affixed to its packaging or accompanying documents. This next one is if a directive requires the involvement of a notified body in the conformity assessment procedure, depending on the legislation, an identification number may need to be put behind the CE logo. This is done under the responsibility of the notified body. Now lastly, let us discuss how to obtain CE marking. As the product's manufacturer, you bear sole responsibility for declaring conformity with all requirements. You don't need a license to affix the CE marking to your product. However, before doing so, you must ensure a few things. First one, ensure conformity with all relevant EU-wide requirements. The second one, determine whether you can assess your product by yourself or if you have to involve a notified body. The third one, put together a technical dossier documenting conformity. The fourth one, draft and sign an EU declaration of conformity. Now, once your product bears the CE marking, if the competent national authority requests, you must provide them with all the information and supporting documentation concerning CE marking. Friends, we have now come to the conclusion of this particular session. In case you have any questions or queries about today's topic, then please put them in the comment section of the video on our YouTube channel and we will be really happy answering them. Till then, best wishes from TNV Academy.